have we just seen the upset of the year? I'm delighted to be joined by Kenny. Kenny, I know it wasn't great for you, but how did you see the card?
Yeah, well, we'll start from the start side and work backwards. We'll start from the fights I actually managed to see through Sky's incompetence. So I managed to see the main event, which was Dillian Whyte versus Alexander Povetkin, and wow, um, I we spoke about this before. We've spoken about the Dillian Whyte and Alexander Povetkin fight a couple of times. I picked Dillian Whyte to win this fight on points, if I remember correctly, but we did raise huge concerns about the fact that Dillian Whyte had got rid of Mark of Tibbs and had brought in a new trainer, and then he brought in Caldwell. Now, whether or not that had anything to do with it, I don't know, but uh, him getting knocked out in this fight was not, in hindsight, Captain Hindsight. It's not completely unexpected, right? We did raise concerns going into this that this probably wasn't the best time to change trainer, and then once you've changed trainer, you got another trainer in, so not hugely unexpected, but it was unexpected when you watched how the fight was panning out in real time, right? Because he had Povetkin down twice.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that, the corner that is, Caldwell and Miller, I think they are. They was, to me at least, giving conflicting messages.
Well,
And
I was texting you as the fight was going on in real time, and I was saying I'm hearing far too much of Dave Caldwell in that corner, right? I'm hearing
yeah,
far too
sure.
much of him for just being all the interviews he gave. It was, oh, I'm just a second man. I'm just in the in the I'm just in the background in case anything goes wrong. And all I could hear was Dave Caldwell.
Yeah, you could hear him screaming during the
Yeah,
fight. And
yeah.
I mean, as I said before, I don't really know much about Xavier Miller. I know he worked with Don Charles, but for me, I think it shows that yes, he didn't lose the fight because he changed trainer, but him and Tibbs, they seem to have a stable relationship. They seem to know one another, and I think it can go a long way, a fighter and a trainer's trust. And I think maybe not that it was the sole reason he lost, but I think it could be quite a big reason why he lost.
Yeah, well, the reason I predicted pre-fight that Dillian Whyte would win on points because I thought Dillian Whyte, and I said before, I thought Dillian Whyte was going to employ the tactics that Joshua was employing until Joshua knocked him out, which was he was using distance, stay, don't fight on the inside with Povetkin, which you didn't really do, but you don't want to stand in front of Povetkin long enough to let him put a short uppercut on your chin. And that's
Sure.
what happened to Dillian Whyte. I don't know how, I don't know, I don't know if that was, if he was being told that, but you really don't want to stand on the inside for too long with Alexander Povetkin. And yeah, and that's what happened. So
Yeah, do you think it was a case that maybe White felt too comfortable in the fight and maybe he
perhaps,
was too
perhaps,
relaxed?
perhaps, having Povetkin down a couple of times, it was maybe just a case of Whyte thinking, I've got him here. But that's the rule of the corner, right? They've got to tell you, look, you can't think you've got this fight won before it's won. And maybe maybe it was, I don't know. I don't know how much of you put on that on the fighter over the corner, but I mean, just looking for the long-term implications for Whyte, I mean, that's over now, right?
Yes, yeah, certainly. What I did find quite interesting was the fact that Eddie Hearn, well, he repeated it 2 or 3 times, that Whyte has the automatic rematch clause, and apparently so that will put him back in the same position with the WBC. But for me, I don't think that. I mean, I know he's waited a long time, but I can see him wait another year, 18 months maybe, before he's even in contention for a shot.
Well, that could mean, I mean, yeah, I mean there's all sorts of ramifications there, right? But I mean, it could be. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the WBC. You've got to fight Whyte in February, and now Whyte's lost. Okay, even if he does fight Povetkin again in say Christmas time, early January, February, it's going to be summertime again, and I have no idea, how the mandatories affects things now, right? And and I worry for Whyte. I do worry for him because he, like, I don't mean to chastise or Povetkin, but Povetkin's, what is he, 40 now? If you're not beating these guys now, I mean, this was a guy that Joshua knocked out in the 7th round a few years ago, right?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
So
What I
you're
was
talking
going
about,
to
yeah,
say,
yeah, carry on.
yeah. Do you think that this shows the limitations of Whyte and how far he can go in his professional career, or do you think he can go further and maybe claim a version of a world title?
Well, I don't know. Like, I thought leading up to this fight, I thought I would have backed Dylan Whyte to beat Deontay Wilder. I would have perhaps even backed him to beat Tyson Fury. But is is this changing your trainer in the middle of a fight camp? This kind of decisions. No, I don't know. I'm not a fighter, right? But is this the right thing to be doing? And if he's making these kind of decisions, and if you're making these kind of decisions and you don't know what you're doing, I don't mean to just know what he's doing, because I'm not a fighter, but we flagged this before, right? So I don't know if you're making decisions like that, and well, we brought it up, we said it before, getting rid of Tibbs and bringing on a trainer that probably isn't, we don't know this trainer, and then bringing in Caldwell in the fight camp week. If you're going to continue to make these decisions, I don't know what's going to happen to you in the future. And that might not be the reason he lost the fight, but it was flagged up. It was flagged
Yeah, I certainly think it's a
before.
big reason. So,
And I can't make those. So I'll give you an example. Like you could say, well, changing a trainer is not the greatest thing to do in the lead up to a fight, but I can't definitively give you any proof that it's not. However, at the same thing, you look at if you look at the way in the workplace does, right? If you look at a health and safety perspective, if you look at X amount of things happens, you look at graphs and you look at trends. If you do more of this, then less of this happens. Or if you do less of this, more of this happens. And the same thing happens with boxers, right? You change trainers halfway through your camp, more boxers lose fights and then they win fights, right? Now, it's not an exact science and you can't prove the correlation between the two, but You can see it's there. So I don't know why people don't learn from it.
Yeah, I think you raise a great point there, and I think the only heavyweight where you could say that the change in trainers work is when Tyson Fury left Ben Davison and joined Andy Lee and co when he beat Wilder. But I
Yeah,
think
but
with
they had a long time to they didn't do it halfway through a training camp, right? They
of
did that
course, yeah,
they did that, before the training camp even started. So
yeah, and I think I mean one thing Dylan White definitely can't blame he's lost on is his condition because I know for a fact Ruben Tavares, who was his strength and conditioner, he's a creme of the creme, so he can't blame it on that.
and it
Maybe,
yeah, and it may be just a case that he got a bit complacent during that fight, but you need a trainer there in your corner to say when you're coming out for the next round, he's not done yet. You know, stay back from him. Don't get into range. Don't stand in front of the guy so that you can throw a left uppercut in your chin.
yeah, absolutely. And I know Sky claimed they were quite heavy knockdowns, but for me, each time Povetkin was knocked down, he wasn't seriously in trouble or
Yeah,
seriously
yeah.
out of the
It wasn't
fight.
like the Joshua knockdown where he was, where his trainer was trying to pull him out of the ring to say no. Like the Joshua fight when he fought Joshua, when Joshua knocked him down, his trainer was basically trying to stop it right there and then.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then he got up again, and then that was the end of it. It was knockdowns, but it wasn't horrific knockdowns, right?
No, I mean, I would say there was a little bit more than flash knockdowns, but he definitely knew where he was and he had his senses about him. But
Yeah. So his trainer should have been telling him, look, you've put him down a couple of times. You're well hard. You're well ahead on the cards. Just keep going. Keep it at range. You know, get to the fifth, sixth, seventh round. You're going to be 5, 6, 7 rounds up, and then Povetkin's going to have to start getting desperate. He's going to start lunging. He's going to start giving you opportunities to counter him, and then you can knock him out later on in the fight. I don't know why that didn't happen.
yeah, absolutely. And logically speaking, you would say that's the perfect game plan, but I don't know because I don't know if you picked it up, but I think it was as early as round 2 or 3. You had Dave Coldwell speak and then White's head trainer, and he was almost acknowledging both of them. And for me, that sent bad signs because he may have a scrambled thoughts, and you know, it didn't really send a positive messages that they were one whole because Heath is new unit.
Well, it might have been a case of Dylan White had him down a couple of times, and he might have thought, well, it took Joshua 7 to get him down, so if I can get him down earlier, it might say a thing or two about that. That may have played I don't know, right? I'm not Dylan White, but yeah, certainly, huge questions have got to be asked of the corner. The fact that Dillian White was standing there to get a short left uppercut on the chin, you've got to ask questions there. I've only
Uh,
seen it once. I haven't seen the replay because, as you know from earlier on, and I'm sure I will complain about this as we go along, I didn't have the Sky Sports stream for the boxing YouTube. I only watched it online, which we'll come on to later. So I've only seen it once. I've only seen the knockout once. I haven't seen any of the replays and any of the reaction afterwards.
yeah, one thing that you could say about the corner, I don't know which one said it, but they said it. He was 1 or 2 punches away from finishing it and going into the 5th round, the round he got stopped. And for me, that's the wrong message to give to him. You surely have to say, carry on what you're doing, box behind the jab, keep moving. because that's what opens the punches to get put to Povetkin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're fighting, if you're in your seventh or eighth fight, the guy's one or two fights ready to go, get rid of him. Fine, fair enough. But when you're fighting Alexander Povetkin, now you might think he's as old as he is, but the guy's only lost to two fighters, Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua, and you could argue they're two of the greatest heavyweight boxers for the last 20 years, right? But you could certainly argue that of Klitschko, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how Joshua goes remains to be seen. So this isn't it's not it's not Audley Harrison you're fighting in there, right?
Yeah. And I think, I would say that possibly the way that they were treating Povetkin, as I say, there was about three of them speaking at the one time. I don't know who said it, but you would have thought that Dylan Whyte was fighting, I don't know, Dave Allen in the corner. The way they were in almost, they were demeaning Povetkin. That they were sort of saying, yep, that's him done now. It's only one or two punches before he's done, which obviously we've seen now wasn't the case. And I think it's just poor work from his corner.
That's the thing, you just got to, I mean, if you can tell in these, you're telling Dillian Whyte, because that was, he was at the end of the fourth. I think Povetkin was down, and then it was quite close to the end of the fourth, and it wasn't a huge knockdown, right? And then so you've got to say to him, look, you knocked this guy a couple of times, knocked him down a couple of times. He's not seriously hurt, so just carry on with the boxing, right? So I don't know why Dylan Whyte was there to take that uppercut. I don't know. I really don't know why.
Yeah. And it's obviously going to be a hard pill to swallow for Dylan Whyte, but it wasn't like he was losing the fight or being outboxed like I've seen on social media. Some people are suggesting that he could pack it in now, but that's not the case at all.
No, he's not going to pack it in, but it wasn't like, I think he's got to take a look. He really has to take a look at his corner here. Now, I know the corner doesn't fight the fight for you, but you've got to take a look at, why was I there? Why was I standing? Because he's bigger than Povetkin is, right? And he's bigger by Povetkin by some way, and he's got a much, his arms are huge, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right? So he's got to think, why am I standing? And it wasn't like a long uppercut from Povetkin. He was right there. You've got to think, why am I standing so close to the guy to get that uppercut? Right? That's the first thing you're going to have to ask. And no one's at heavyweight. No one's immune to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, even
the uppercut is the worst punch to get in boxing, right? If somebody hits you an uppercut really hard, especially heavyweight, on the chin, you're out. Unless you really got a serious chin. It's the punch that devastates everyone. You can go back a long time. I remember Mike Tyson v. Buster Douglas, right?
Yeah.
And the barrage of punches that Mike Tyson took before he got knocked down, the punch that really hurt him was the uppercut, right?
Yeah.
And it happens to everyone. An uppercut, it's a horrible punch, right? It's a horrible punch to take. So you don't want to be there for that punch.
Yeah, and I think for me at least, the thing that surprised me the most was how Dylan Whyte was almost square on with the rope, so open to take that punch. I mean, even if he did see it coming. I don't think he could have maybe braced himself, but I think he was still going down.
Yeah, I mean it's man, it's you just don't. It's just a it's just a horrible punch to take. It just comes right under your chin, and unless you're seriously hard man, you can't take one of them. It just knocks you clean out.
Yeah, so say if they're the rematch is, I don't know, December, say, how do you see it going?
Well, it depends. It depends what Dillian White wants to do here, right? So he needs to get his corner sorted for starters,
Yeah,
and he could. I think he could box his way in the same way that I would look at this similar to the Joshua Ruiz fight, right? And not the same, not to say that that Povetkin's an Andy Ruiz, but Dylan White could quite easily box that fight to a 12 round win, which is what he probably should have done tonight, or should have, or if he had Povetkin down twice and then kept a couple of rounds at his distance, he could have got him out later. But I think White could win that fight without trying to go nuts and knock Povetkin out. And I think he could do that. But the only thing is, if they fight again, so what are we in August now? So if they go say they fight at the end of the year, it's going to be the summer again before they fight. But then what's going to happen there? Because you know Povetkin's now mandatory with WBC, and he could say, "Well, no, I'm going to fight Tyson Fury at the end of February or start." So it's really, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be crazy.
yeah. I mean, one thing Eddie Hearn did mention was the fact that maybe this frees up the chance of having AJV Fury because although Povetkin is now mandatory, it isn't as black
Yeah,
and
they
white
could
as
extend it a bit longer. Yeah.
yeah. And I suppose the biggest stumbling block now is the whole WBO with Usyk and Chisora. Well, that comes, but I don't think that will necessarily get in the way. I mean, I have my
Well, Joshua,
reservation.
well, Joshua's going to have to fight Pulev, right? That's the IBF are going crazy about that.
Yeah,
So, say Joshua comes through that, say in October or November, so they could set up a Fury Joshua fight for kind of summer next year.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
could go that way. But then there's you've still got the Usyk WBO mandatory, which I don't know how long that's going to go, and then yeah, I don't know. It's going to be really. There's going to have to be a lot of talks going on. Eddie Hearn's going to have a fair time to go through in the next 6 months with the governing bodies.
yeah. Well, the latest on Chisora and Usyk is apparently November the 8th. They're looking at for that fight. So say that if it's the case, you would be thinking that Usyk maybe, if he comes through, that we think he will, maybe what April, May, he'll be ready to fight next.
Yeah, it could be. So the timings are all crazy now because say Joshua fights Pulev and Chisora fights Usyk around the same time, they could fight in the spring of next year. But then if Fury fights Wilder winter time, it might not be. And then White versus Povetkin 2, it's going to be, there's going to be a. Well, Joshua's going to fight Pulev, and that's not going to happen until probably the winter.
Yeah, I would say December at the earliest.
And then Joshua fights, say, Usyk springtime next year. But then if Fury fights Wilder in the winter time, it's going to be, the timing's going to be a bit crazy. It might have to be summer, late autumn before the Joshua Fury fight could happen, and then there's going to be another mandatory somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, would you honestly say that AJ could fight Fury next year? Knowing all the politics we know, do you think it could actually happen?
If the politics of boxing weren't involved, they could do it next year. Yeah, no problem. Springtime next year. But the politics are the politics, right? So,
Sure.
and you can't ignore it. And this is it's the thing with people. The biggest frustration I have talking to people within boxing is they say, "Oh, forget the politics, and we just want to see the fight. And when is someone going to fight?" And it's like, "Oh, we don't care about the politics." And it's like, okay, that's fine. You don't care about the politics, but it's there. You have to take it into account, right? Doesn't matter if you care about it or not. It's like saying, I just want to leave the EU. I don't care about the politics. And it's like, well, you have to care about the politics because that's what gets us to leave the EU, right?
Sure, yeah. Absolutely.
In the same kind of thing. But there's the politics. Politics, there's politics in everything. Politics is just the explanation of how something comes to be, right? Of how something comes to, how you come to an event. Right? That's just how it gets there. And if you don't care about them, or if you don't, if no one, if you couldn't look at how, you couldn't discuss how things are, they wouldn't be how they are. So I'm afraid you have to deal with it, right?
Yeah,
So,
I agree. And going back to the Dillian Whyte fight tonight, I've seen a few clips of him backstage, and I know Time's a great healer and whatnot. But do you think? I know the referee waved it off because it was a heavy knockdown. But do you think perhaps maybe he could have been given the 10 count and possibly got up from that, or would you think it's that black and white there?
You could have maybe began to count, but I think the way that he was hit and the way that he was knocked down, he just folded, right?
Sure.
And so I can't blame the ref for calling it off straight away, but I think, it's the same thing with Tyson Fury in the Deontay Wilder fight. When Fury went down against Wilder, although it wasn't like Fury didn't go down, he went down in stages, right? He was hit and hit again, and then went down and was lying on the deck, and the ref was counting him. But as soon as Whyte was hit, he was down, right? It took Fury 2 hits to go down, and he was, the first hit kind of put him down halfway, and the second hit put him down all the way. But this was one punch, bang, you're out, and the ref can see it, right?
Yeah, sure.
When you're ref standing there, and you take an uppercut, and then you, from one punch, land you straight on the deck, But I do think at the same time, I do think the refs are a bit early to call off fights.
I agree there. Yeah.
I just think sometimes with the uppercut, as I say, it's such a horrible punch to take, right? I just think they see it and they think, oh, and then once you hit the deck, if you hit, like you see when Whyte fought Joshua, and that's what put Whyte out in his fight against Joshua, because he was taking a lot of punches before he went down. And then when Joshua hit him with the uppercut, he was out, right? He was between ropes.
Yeah. Yeah, do you
Um,
remember, speaking of uppercuts, do you remember the uppercut that AJ almost took Klitschko off his feet, but he stayed on his feet and carried on fighting with?
yeah, now I think that was because Klitschko pretty much just about saw that coming, and he actually hit he actually with that uppercut he didn't hit Klitschko on the jaw. I think he hit him just kind of on the side of the face.
Yeah,
But I think if I had caught Klitschko on the jaw, that Klitschko wouldn't have got off from that.
no, yeah,
Um,
I agree.
and that's Joshua's best punch, right? That's something
Sure.
that's people say, oh, Joshua's got he's his best punches he's straight right or he's left hook. No, Joshua's best punch is his uppercut, right? And if you get hit with that on your chin from him, you ain't getting up. I don't care who you are, because not because Joshua's a particularly hard person, just because he's such a big guy, right? And
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. If he hits you with one of them full force on the chin, you aren't getting up. I don't. It doesn't matter if you're Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson or whoever. No, no chance. And that's why that's the only reason Klitschko stood up there, because I think he caught it. He kind of caught it on the side of the face rather than the jaw. And even with the side of the face, it only took a couple more punches before Vladimir Klitschko went down, and then Joshua finished the fight.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, while we're still on Dylan White, do you see him taking the Povetkin fight straight away, or do you think he may have
Yeah,
an
yeah, I
interim
do.
fight?
I do, because as much as we sat here and said and criticized Dillian White, he's that kind of guy. He's not one to back down from a challenge. I don't think he'll want to take an interim fight. I think he'll just be like, right, I should have had this guy. I almost had him. So he'll go, like, even I don't even think I think even if he'd lost this fight like horrendously, I think even then he would want to go straight back into a rematch, because that's the kind of guy he is. He doesn't, he's not the okay, I'll just take an interim fight in between kind of guy. It's not him. So I'm sure White will be wanting to get right back into it. And then the thing is, he'll look at that even more. He'll think, I almost had him. I almost had him. So I'm pretty sure I'll get him next time. I think that'll be White's mentality.
Yeah, I mean, even though Dylan White lost, I think I'm right in saying he's only the second fighter to have Povetkin down twice in one fight, other than Klitschko and Fury, which is no mean feat. And as we say, maybe his corner perhaps may have done him a disservice, but I think he has beaten up Povetkin, but I think he needs to stay switched on, as we've seen tonight, for the whole 12 rounds. Then maybe, I don't know, a situation between him and Tibbs, but you would feel that that's only would better his chance of winning if he could bring him back, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that'll come out. I think at some point, whether it's a kind of sly thing that gets put into an interview somewhere, I think Dylan White will say at some point that having two voices in his corner didn't help him that night. Now, I'm not saying it's responsible for his defeat, but you could hear that on the commentary. You could hear Dave Caldwell
Yeah,
really quite vocal on that. So, and that may be something that might just be. I don't know. As I say, I've not been a fighter, right? But it might just be something that catches your attention. That when you're hearing two voices coming from your corner in a place where there's no fans, it might just be the difference between you not having taken a step back when you should have. Do you know what I mean? You might be
yeah,
sitting there
sure.
thinking, well, who am I listening to here? And the next thing you know, bang, the guys hit you with a tremendous uppercut and you're out cold, right? And this
Yeah,
is,
I think
and it
that's a
might
bit.
be, do you know something? I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was it, if that was why Dylan White lost that fight tonight. And we 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 brought it up beforehand, although we couldn't make that distinction, right? We'd said, I don't know if it's a change of trainer, I don't know if it's this, I don't know if it's that. But we could say, look, I don't know if changing trainer is good for him. I couldn't tell you why changing trainer is not good for him, but you could you could make, because this is anyone looking at this, looking at the fight beforehand, even if you know boxing, you would say Povetkin's dangerous, it could go either way. But well, anyone's picking Dylan White, right?
Yeah, I mean, the
But
reason I picked
yeah,
Dylan White was because
yeah,
of his recent fights, and although I wasn't 100% confident, I still would have thought. I mean, I think 85% of boxing fans would have picked Dylan White,
yeah.
maybe more.
Yes, but when you're analyzing, say, the defeat, when you're analyzing everything, when something goes wrong and you're looking at graphs and charts and da 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 da, and you say, well, here's a line on a graph that goes up. Okay, it's great there, and then it goes down, right? So when you're looking at the downward trend, you look at what happened at the same time that downward trend happened. And they're going to look straight away at the trainer, right? Now, I'm not saying the new guy isn't great, but that's going to be the big alarming thing that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, sure.
You
I
can look
mean,
at if you're analyzing the differences in the change between anything, is you're going to say all of a sudden, we're up here, and then all of a sudden we're down here. So what changed to make us go down here? And you could, if you're not willing to take it upon yourself to say that it was me that changed, you're going to look at what changed around you to make you, from where you were up here, you're now down here. So what changed to put you down here? What changed? My trainer changed, right? Now, that might not be the case, right? It might not, it might just be, but that's that's probably what people are going to look at, and what's one of the most likely things people are going to look at.
yeah, I think it's one of the obvious things to pinpoint on, isn't it? The trainer. I mean, personally, I've never heard of Xavier Miller before. I don't know if you have.
No, neither have I. But it might not necessarily be the trainer. It might just been the change, right? See
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it might be a case of just being fighting and being trained one way to changing and being trained and to fight another way, right?
Yeah.
If you
And
don't have enough time to adapt to that, say, or whatever reason, that might be the reason you lost. It's not that the trainer isn't good, it's just a different way of doing things. And because you haven't necessarily adapted to that way. But I don't necessarily think, because for Dillian White to beat Alexander Povetkin, I don't think the plan should have been anything much other than keep it at range, right? And then I really don't believe having Dave Caldwell in your corner was helpful. And I don't mean that it's Dave Caldwell. I don't mean having two trainers in your corner was helpful there, because all I could hear was Dave Caldwell, Dave Caldwell, Dave Caldwell in between rounds. And I'm thinking, well, he's supposed to be a second pair of eyes, not the main pair of eyes. So I think possibly Dylan White was hearing two voices, one thing telling him another thing, and then he maybe just thought, what the hell's going on here? And then next thing you know, if you're talking at the elite level, right? You take your
Yeah,
eye off the ball for a second, someone slams a short uppercut on your chin, and you're out.
yeah. I mean, with the problems you have with Sky, I doubt you caught it, but I don't know if you've seen in the past on big fights, they sort of put a camera in the dressing room on their YouTube channel. And even I was watching it for a while, and even watching the Dylan White warm up, he sort of had about 3 or 4 guys he was speaking to and almost sort of going through tactics with. And now, from the start, that doesn't fill you with confidence. But I feel if Dylan White was with Mark Tibbs, yes, he may not necessarily have won, but I think he would have stuck to the game plan. He would have known what to do and when to do it. And I feel that may have pulled him through the fight.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think he would have won. And I'm not a huge believer in coincidences, right? Like I'm not a huge so like if you're doing something well all the time and then change something and then you do something badly, I will say to you, well, you changed that, so you got beat. And
sure.
someone might say, oh, well, no, it's just a coincidence. I'm not a huge believer in coincidences.
No. And I
So,
think with boxing, that tells you the most. I mean, say you had a 12-week camp and say you changed trainer, you would think that you would still have generally the same sort of impetus and the same tactics. Although they may be changed slightly, you would still think that the game plan you've always had, I don't know how many fights he'd had, say he's had 20 fights, you would say he would still go the same way. But for me, there was quite a difference. Not how he started, but sort of how he changed his fight during the Povetkin fight. Whereas normally he would be sort of looking to counter punch and looking. He was not only on the front foot, he was sort of almost waiting for Povetkin to do his move. Whereas normally he would be on the front foot and negating that.
yeah,
If you know what I mean.
yeah, I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure if it's down to the change of trainer from Tibbs or if it's the extra trainer. The extra
Sure.
trainer is put into the corner. So it'll be interesting to see what Dylan White thinks it is because something's going to happen now, right? He's not going to have both of those trainers in his corner for the next fight.
No, I mean, when did he have Caldwell? Was it Tuesday, Wednesday? I mean, that's quite short notice for anybody.
Yeah. So, is that a good idea? Is Dylan White going to attribute that to Caldwell, or is he going to attribute that to Miller, or is he just going to say it was him? So be interesting to see how that plays out. But that's for Dylan White. That's awful because he's fought really good fighters after really good fighters after really good fighters, and everyone has said, "You, me, every guy that's got a YouTube channel, everybody on Sky, even Eddie Hearn, promoters have said he can't keep on fighting world class fighters after world class fighters after world class fighters, and he still did it. So it's gonna be really interesting to see where Dylan White goes from here because you can't keep fighting top 5, top 10 fighters while you're waiting for a shot at a world title because eventually you'll get beat, and that goes for
Yeah, I
anyone.
think that's as we've seen tonight. I mean, as you say, he's fought top 10 fighters, and there's only a amount of time you can roll the dice, and I think that's proved that tonight.
Yeah.
You would have to say that maybe he has 1 or 2 fights, but has he reached as far as he can go now? I mean, do you see him as a potential world champion?
Yes, I still do. I still do see him because see at the top level, see it. world-class level anything. Doesn't matter if it's boxing, football, or anything. There's a certain degree of luck, right?
Sure.
In where you're at. Now, I don't know how much it is. I don't know if it's 20%, 30%, 50%, or whatever. There's a certain degree of luck. And you see it. I'll tell you something that may resonate with anyone that's listening to this that's watched the Europa League final, right? With Sevilla versus Inter. Now, the first goal that Inter scored was a penalty. Now, Sevilla could have very well had their central defender sent off in that in for that penalty. Could have very well had the guy sent off. And if they'd got the guy sent off, I don't believe that they would have won that game. However, he didn't get sent off. He got a yellow card. So that was lucky that he got a yellow card. He probably should have got a red. But they didn't. They were lucky they got a yellow card. So they left 11 men on the pitch, ended up Sevilla 1, right? So that is this, and that's a difference because it's the team game, right? But there's a certain amount of luck that goes into anything, right? So if you get lucky enough and you have the talent as well, then you'll win. But if you get unlucky, then it doesn't matter how good you are, you'll lose. So we'll just have to see how Dylan Whyte's luck goes going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that this loss makes her absolutely short or a bad fighter like some social media comments. Povetkin, I don't know how high you rated him, but for me, he was, I don't know, 12 maybe. And I think Dylan Whyte, he's young, he can come back again. But I think for me, the biggest thing he'll learn from this is you can't take anyone for granted.
No, I mean, I'd certainly, even though Povetkin's as old as he is, I'd certainly put him up there. I mean, my just going through, say, a top 5 fighters in the world, you're going to have Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua up as 1 and 2. It doesn't matter which way around you put them, right? They're going to be there. Now, I'm not putting Deontay Wilder up there. I'm not putting Deontay Wilder in my top 10, right? So you're going to have Joshua Fury in your top 2. Then you're going to look at 3, 4, and 5, right? So you're struggling here. You've got Whyte, Povetkin, and then probably you could look at Joseph Parker, or you could even maybe look at, what were you saying, Luis Ortiz or
Yeah, sure.
like that, right? I'm going to discount Deontay Wilder because the guy can throw a punch and that's all he can do, right? So that doesn't get you in my top 5. Doesn't even get you in my top 10, right? So you look at Joshua Fury 1 and 2, depending which way around you look at. Whyte 3, Povetkin 4, Joe Parker 5, maybe Andy Ruiz 5. You could debate that kind of 3, 4, and 5 kind of area. So I still think it's nowhere near the end of the line for Whyte. And I think that I think if he gets his trainer situation sorted out, he'll be fine. But it's just a setback for him. And it may cause problems for him going forward because he's gonna, if he looks at it now and thinks, well, I was WBC #1 for 900 days or whatever. Now I'm not. It's a bit kind of crazy, but yeah, he's gonna have to, as he always does, he's gonna have to grit his teeth and just bear down and try and get it done again. He's going to have to try and beat Povetkin again if they have got a rematch clause. And I imagine they will, because Povetkin's going to be making serious money, especially if there's a rematch clause. Povetkin's going to make a whole lot of money out of that.
Yeah, I think Eddie Hearn is almost he has said there's a rematch clause, but I think for Dylan White, there's by no means it's the end of him. Almost this can make him grow into a better fighter. You've seen fighters, particularly heavyweights, in the past.
It could. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it could be another good thing for Whyte, because Whyte has been fighting really good fighters since he fought Joshua. He's been fighting these really good fighters, so he may have just thought have gotten a bit too big for his own boots. You know what I mean? And this just might be a reminder for him to say, okay, I need to just realize that I'm fighting top level here and I need to be the best I can be, rather than just going out there and thinking I'm going to win. And I'm not saying that's what he's doing, right? But it may be the case. I mean, I can't understand how. I mean, getting rid of Mark Tibbs, fair enough, but how you can go into a fight with a trainer that no one's heard of and then getting Dave Caldwell in at the last minute, I don't know. I don't know how we ever thought that was going to work. As I say, I'm not a fighter. I don't know. Maybe that is something that normally happens. Maybe, but I do question that those decisions.
Yeah, I mean Xavier Miller, who his trainer was. I mean, he started by cleaning the gym where he learned his trade, and although that you could say is admirable, I don't. Maybe he learned of a few trainers, I say, but surely the position would tickle you where you would think, okay, he's an up and coming trainer, but he hasn't really got the ability to get me through a high level heavyweight fight. Okay, Mark Tibbs, he wasn't a well known trainer, but his dad was, and he had the upbringing of his dad around big fights. So you would say that's quite a big own goal from Dylan White. Okay, he may not change his training team, but you would have thought that he must consider it before the rematch.
Yeah, I mean, I know that with Mark Tibbs, like when he fought Joshua, as much as Joshua, okay, ended up knocking him out in that fight. I mean, in the second round of that fight, he had Joshua hurt, right? So you're thinking, well, here's a guy. I'm going along my career here, and I've got a guy that's training me, and at one point we could have beaten, because just say that if that second round had gone a bit differently, Whyte could have beaten Joshua, and you're thinking, well, we were quite close to beating a guy that's,
The guy.
that the probably the best British fighter for the last 20 years, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So what is wrong with that, right? What's wrong that you've got to change your trainer? You know, it's not it's like I have like people people can criticize me all they want, but I think Anthony Joshua is probably the best British fighter I've seen in the last 20 years, and I'd put Tyson Fury into that bracket as well. Right now, they're totally different fighters, and the reason I like Joshua over Fury is because he's much more aggressive than Fury is. And you can argue that point, and I'm not saying that any one position is better than the other. But when you're as a fighter, when you're sitting there in his whatever it was, his 14th or 15th fight or whatever the fight was, to say, well, I had this guy on the ropes. He went since he beat me. He's then gone on to beat Vladimir Klitschko, who when you look at that fight, Joshua Klitschko fight was the best Klitschko I've seen for a very long time, right? If not ever. And okay, he got beat by Andy Ruiz, but then he beat Andy Ruiz again, and you're just thinking, you're thinking, well, how, how what's enough for you? How good is good for you, right? So I don't understand that reason to get rid of his trainer. Maybe it was a personal thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, with Dillian White, when he fought AJ, wasn't Jonathan Baxey's trainer, so he's come from,
You
okay,
could,
Manuel Stewart wasn't about them, but surely he's come from that tutelage. And now to land up with Xavier Miller, okay, I don't want to discredit him, but, just something doesn't sit right with me from the outside.
yeah. There's definitely something wrong. So you can look at when we look at the bear stats, right? Let's just look at the bear stats. Let's not try and make too many correlations because most people don't. And most when you look at companies, they don't do it either, right? A company will say we create. Say a tech company said, just say like Google said, okay, we put a new something on our search bar. Say we because Google changed their style all the time. So we changed our O into a something,
Yeah,
and our search history went up 50%, right? So let's keep that there. Because when we changed that O to a funny man's face or something, all of a sudden people liked it and our visits to our page went up 50%. Bang, it was up. So let's keep it there, right? We don't know if that is we don't know if people are doing that because we changed the O in the Google, but it's up, right? So when you look at the bear, you say Dillian White says, "Look, okay, I was winning up, 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 and then I changed my trainer and it went down."
yeah,
That's literally, I think, all the analysis you need to do. And it might not be right. It might not be, but that's how simplistic you look at things as most people look at those things in that way.
yeah,
Or you might say, because I added two trainers in instead of one, you could look at it and say, I had one trainer and it was doing really well, and then I put two trainers in and it went bad. Although Dave Caldwell was only all added in at the last minute.
yeah, absolutely. And for the people listening, don't think for 1 minute we're saying if Tevez was a trainer, White wouldn't get caught with that shot, because that's what we're not saying at all. We're saying that
No,
maybe the game plan and maybe the distraction caused a bigger upset than perhaps we may have had.
yeah, I think personally, I think, and I might be completely wrong, and I might be completely wrong because I've not been a fighter, but just looking from the outside looking in, I heard Dave Caldwell clearly throughout that fight, right? I could hear him clearly all the time. I think that maybe getting those calls from Dave Caldwell, two trainers instead of one, maybe had Dillian Whyte not quite 100% focused, and he was standing where he shouldn't have been standing to get an uppercut on the jaw. Right now, I might be wrong. That's fair enough, but it wasn't like it was a long uppercut that came from a mile away. He was standing in close to get that uppercut on the chin.
Yeah, yeah. He was a sitting duck for it, in other words. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know about you. With him being in Portugal, they suggested like they would Katie Taylor the overtraining thing. I don't buy that, but for me, as I say, yesterday from today, he looked a lot bigger. I don't know if that's just because of the camera or whatever, but for me, from his weigh-in yesterday, just looking across his shoulders and chest, he looked quite a lot bigger today.
He maybe did. I mean, I didn't pay too much attention to that, but he still didn't look. I mean, they had him when they did the weigh-in yesterday. They were like, "Oh yes, he's got this brilliant new physique and blah 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 and all the rest of it." And it wasn't. I've seen Dylan Whyte in better shape than he was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, he still had his ticks, didn't he, from Saudi? So he wasn't in that great
Yeah.
shape in that regard.
You know, and you can always tell when a fighter's insecure about their body shape because when they go on the scales, they pull their shorts down so that you can see their stomach muscles difference between their stomach and their actual hips. But I don't know what, especially at heavyweight, I don't know what this the significance of this is, right?
Yeah, I mean,
You know, what's the significance of your weight because anyone who knows about weight loss, now I know this is something I know a lot about because I've lost a lot of weight, right? A pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, you literally cannot notice that you've lost that weight, right?
no.
It doesn't matter how cut you are. Doesn't matter how fat you are. If you lose 3 pounds and you're fat, you literally cannot see it. If you lose a stone or 2 stone, fine, fair enough, right? But you can't literally pull your shorts down and show that your hips, you've got no fat on your hips, and you know it's and you've got stuff around your stomach because it doesn't. Because that's where all your fat's stored. For most people, fat gets stored around your stomach, right? That's just what
Yeah,
happens unless you've got crazy genetics that you store fat somewhere else. But I didn't think I've seen Dylan Whyte in much better condition than he was yesterday. And you know the guy's giving it, oh, look at this new physique of Whyte's. And it's like, well, compared to the Marius Vac fight, it's a new physique. But compared to his previous fights, it's not a new physique.
yeah. And one thing that did make me laugh, in fact, was Tony Bellew was the one that had for Sky saying that. I mean, he let's say he never looked $1 million on the scales, did he? So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think we can take that with a pinch of salt.
what Tony Bellew is just paid to toe the sky line, isn't he? And I like the guy. I like Tony Bellew. I think he's one of the better guys that are on Sky. But you know, what are you going to do? I think Whyte could lose. I think Whyte could be in tremendous shape if he wanted to be, because he's a big guy, right? He is heavy set, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a dietitian. I'm not going to say I am, but you would have to say high 17 stone would be an ideal weight for him. I mean, what?
Yeah, I don't know, but I think if Dillian Whyte lost all of his body fat, I'm talking down to like 3-4% body fat, the guy would still be huge, right? He's
Sure,
he's
yeah,
big man, a big man. So I think he could still do whether or not it would make any difference to his actual fighting. I don't know, but um, I still think he could really cut weight still. I think he could. What was he, 18 stone for that? I think he could easily get down to 17 stone. Like, I don't think easily he could get down, but I think he could get down to 17 stone and still fight and be. But he would be shredded.
yeah. I mean, as for Povetkin, I think he was 16 stone, and I think he's weighed that for about the last 3 or 4 years. So I think you could almost take a leaf from his book that he's found his ideal weight, and maybe Whyte can take a lead from his book.
Well, that's something that fighters have got to look at, because Povetkin's been the same weight for, well, round about the same weight for 20 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, obviously, as the consensus is that as you get older, you put on more weight, right? Which is fair enough, because you don't do as much training, you get a bit older, but if you look at if you look at a guy that for 20 years can be at the same weight, and Povetkin's never been shredded, right?
No,
Really, so if Povetkin can do it, then why can't anyone else do it? I mean, how hard really is it to do? If you're an athlete, it's hard for me and you to do, right? Because we like to have a drink on a Saturday night and watch the boxing, right?
sure. Yeah,
And then maybe we might tan a pizza at the same time, right? So
yeah,
that's not
absolutely.
good. That's not good for us. But we're not athletes. We don't live the life. We don't, we're not in the gym for 6 hours a day.
Yeah, and I
So,
think it comes down to discipline, doesn't it?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, because I did that, right? I lost. How much did I lose? About 4 stones, right? I
Yeah,
lost 4 stone, which is uh, 60 odd pounds, right? Now, I did that through discipline, right? I did that through not eating shit, not drinking, all the rest of it, right? So it can be done,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
There's no excuse, there's no excuse as an athlete for coming in or being fat, right? You can't, you could just say, look, I didn't, like, if as long as you say, like, I didn't train as hard as I normally would, fair enough. But you can't turn up and say, I did 3 months of training and I'm still a stone overweight. No, I'm afraid that doesn't happen. You ate too much, or you ate the wrong things.
yeah. I mean, I think it all comes down to hunger, doesn't it? Who wants it more? Who's really driven? And I suppose not just in boxing. I suppose all industries. It just comes down to who's willing to go the extra bit to earn the extra bit more. To
Yep.
show you're really ready for it, and to show your hunger and your passion to hopefully better yourself.
Yeah, that's all it comes down to, right? That's literally, and there's nothing wrong with it, like, if okay, there is something wrong with it if you're a fighter or something, but in just general life, if you say, oh, I didn't lose as much weight as I intended to, you say, well, did you lose weight? Well, yes. Okay, so it's not as bad as you think it is.
No, sure.
But if you're wanting to lose 2 stone for a fight and you're a stone short, then yeah, mate, I'm afraid you've cocked that up.
Yeah, and I think especially in boxing you see it too often. I mean, Benavidez the other week, I think he missed his weight by 3 or 4 pounds, which is
Yeah.
in modern days unheard of. And I suppose all that they get paid well, I suppose it's a fine balance between themselves being healthy and being able to do their job as it was. And and I suppose the other half of that is provide for us, even though we're admittedly a very small part of it. They still get money, hence if they get, I don't know, big TV numbers. And the big thing for those is, do they really want to put the effort in?
Yeah.
Okay, they may get well paid, but is it worth it for them in terms of publicity? And I suppose that's what it all comes down to, really.
Yeah, well, that's what it's like. So if you're like my job is to get up at, say, 5:30 in the morning and go to my work every day, and then do certain things while I'm there, and then come home at whatever it is, 6 o'clock at night, right? That's what I get paid to do, and I do it. So if your job is to be a certain weight at a certain time, if you can't do it, you can't complain. And you can't say, well, okay, you can't say to me, oh, well, my job's much harder than yours. You say, well, no, it's your job, right? You want to swap jobs? Yeah, mate, I'll lose a certain amount of weight, but do you think you could get up at 5:30 in the morning and go to my job and do whatever I do in a day, right? Although it's less physically demanding than your job is, right? Do you think you could do it, right? Well, I think I could possibly lose a stone in 12 weeks, maybe, or whatever it is. Well, you could do it. If I was doing the training, the boxers could quite easily do it. But it's your mentality, right?
Sure.
That's what it is, right? Because
Yeah.
any human being could do any job if your mentality is right, right? Doesn't
Yeah,
matter who you
absolutely.
are. It doesn't like if you know, like I could say I'm probably a stone overweight right now, and they say, well, you've got 12 weeks. You look at like a pound, maybe just over a pound a week. Just go to the gym and just eat a bit less. I could do it, right? If and especially if I've got a team helping me do it.
Yeah, and I think in boxing especially, that's where it comes down to how determined and how driven the fighters are. For example, someone like, I don't know, Felix Cash, you can see he generally wants to win, and with his shape and his body, he's determined to get as far as he can in the sport. Whereas other fighters, not to name any names, but they're just there for the money. Okay, that's
Yeah.
understandable, but are they really there for the right reasons, and are their morals in the right place? I guess that's another episode for another story.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that the likes of cutting weight is easy necessarily. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but if you're if you want to do what you're doing, then it's not that hard, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's, I suppose, as signing a health and safety form, or signing a contract for a job. That's what you got to do, so you just do it, don't you?
Yeah, right. Unless someone's asked you to do something ridiculously difficult, like unless someone's saying, right, you wake up in the morning, come to your work at 7 o'clock in the morning, someone said, like, climb Everest. It's not that difficult, but
No.
you have to be dedicated to what you're doing in order to. You have to believe in what you're doing to do it, right? Yeah, like I wouldn't like I work for a company that drills for oil, right? And if I didn't think if I was a climate change guy that didn't believe that, if I thought that drilling for oil was bad for the world and it was going to be the end of humanity in 9 years, as the climate change people do, then I wouldn't do it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But if I come to my work every day thinking, well, planes have got to fly and cars have got to drive and all the rest of it, then it's my motivation to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I know for the boxing tonight, you didn't really get a good view of anything, but did you catch any of the Taylor and Pursoon fight?
Well, I caught bits of it, but as I was texting you earlier on, and as I'm going to lament Sky for right now, is that I didn't. I only managed to get my stream going for the main event.
Yeah.
So I caught bits of Taylor and Pursoon, and I saw that Pursoon was cut quite badly early on. Now, was that from a punch, or was that? Did you see
Well,
that?
they was there bumping heads quite a lot, but I think he got deemed as a punch, but it's arguable.
No. Well, I mean, what did that get scored in the end? A couple of rounds to Taylor, was it?
Yeah, I think the general consensus on social media was Pursoon won the fight by 2 rounds. But I think on
Okay.
one of the cards, Taylor got it by 6, which I don't think anyone agreed with.
By 6?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh dear. What were the other two? Was it a UD?
yes, yeah. I think it was something on the lines of 96 and 94 on 2 of the cards.
Well, I had, and I'll just start on this now because I bought the Sky pay-per-view on my computer. Now, this is perfectly legitimate. You can buy Sky box office through your computer without having a Sky subscription, which is what I did. Now, from the very first moment I bought it, which was before the pay-per-view even started, I was getting green screen. I was getting two guys fighting each other, two green guys fighting each other in what looked like a jungle, right? Now, I restarted my computer, didn't help any. I did it in Microsoft Edge, I did it in Internet Explorer, and I did it in Google Chrome. Every single one of these, after about 1 minute, it went into green screen. It went into people fighting in a jungle, two green people fighting in a jungle. So I got onto Sky. I was on for them for half the night, and because Sky are not taking any phone calls, right? Anyone who's listening, if you want to call Sky, don't even bother, right? Because they will not take any calls from you. So I had to go on an online chat, in which I had to wait 5-10 minutes for them to come up. So the first time they came up, they said, have you tried clearing your cache and have you tried different web browsers? And I said, yes, I've done all that. Have you tried restarting your computer? Yes, I've done all that. Well, try it again. So I tried it all again, went through, still getting the same thing. So I had to go back into the chat with Sky. I had to wait and wait and wait because I was number 104 in the queue. So I got back to that, and then, okay, Bob, have you tried it? I said, look, I've tried all this. I've tried it all, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so they eventually they refunded me for the pay-per-view show. But by that time, we were 3/4 of the way through the Pursuing Taylor fight, so I missed most of that fight. So Sky did horribly, and I can't imagine I was the only one. I would imagine anyone who was buying the pay-per-view through the internet rather than on Sky, through their box. I imagine anyone that was going through Sky online probably had the same issue that I had. So I ended up getting refunded for my pay-per-view. So I think Sky have not going to done so well on this pay-per-view because I imagine everyone that was online, because this wasn't a my PC issue. I've got a beast of a PC, right? I've got an i7 processor. I've got 64 gigabyte RAM. I've got 3 terabytes solid state drive, right? I've got it's a weapon. My PC is an absolute weapon, right? So this wasn't my computer's fault. This was Sky's online. I don't know if it was their servers or whatever. So I would imagine that Sky have had to refund a lot of people on this pay-per-view online tonight. So I think Eddie Hearn's going to take quite a hit on this fight.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just Sky Online because people that's got the Sky box, the picture broke down a couple of times, and then they added sound crowds. The commentary dropped out 2 or 3 times, and I think overall for Sky tonight, it just wasn't the best of their nights. And I know you can't always blame them, but I just think it was a shambles, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, my internet viewing was terrible. absolutely terrible tonight. I got things going just enough for the main event, but apart from that, I mean, I mean, we can go through some of the earlier fights if you caught any of it. I saw a little bit of the Congo fight, but it was difficult to tell who was who in that fight, and that was just because of the Sky stream. It really, it was just people were green in that fight, right? So
Well, even on Sky TV, to be honest, I didn't really know who was who, apart from the fact he had Congo on his shorts. I wouldn't have known.
uh,
For me, it wasn't the greatest of fights. Okay, Chris Congo won. I don't really think either will be putting up trees anytime soon. Maybe fringe European level, but I think that'll be that for those two.
yeah, yeah. So disappointing night over. But I mean, when I say disappointing night, as I say, for me it was disappointing because I didn't see most of the fights. Um, Disappointing that Dillian Whyte got beat, but not completely unexpected. And I suppose it added a bit of a twist to the night. But I think disappointing overall for Sky. And this was the night they really needed to get this right because this was the pay-per-view, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they made a complete arse of it. In my opinion, that's not to do with the fights, right? It doesn't matter that Dillian Whyte got beat. That's if I'd watched the whole night and then White got beat, yeah, I'm sure it would have been fine. But it's just the real issues that I had with Sky Box Office, and then your main event, when the fight that I actually get to watch ends up in the matchroom fighter getting beat. I think for Sky, it's not for me necessarily because I got my money back for the fight, but I think for matchroom, it's horrendous. It could only be horrendous, and I'll see. We'll see Eddie Hearn tomorrow giving it. Oh, it was a great night apart from Dillian Whyte getting beaten. Katie Taylor won the fight probably by as much as however many the judges gave her fights. For me, they need
Yeah,
to.
for me,
They,
I generally get called pro matchroom and whatnot, but okay, so you can say I'm pro matchroom, but I honestly, the quality we got on Sky, the fights, I don't really think it was above a 5 out of 10, being generous, to be honest.
yeah, yeah, we shouldn't have had to pay for that, to be fair. And as I say, I didn't because I've got my money back from Sky, but I went through a horrendous time this evening to get my money back for that fight. And the people that if someone did get the entire show without interruptions, are probably sitting listening to me thinking I should probably get my money back as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know as we were speaking about during the start of the night, you never really saw the Chelly and Cullen fight, but I know on social
I saw
media.
little bits of it. I saw the first few rounds, and it looked like Chelsea was doing pretty well in the first few rounds, but then I missed the rest of it. But I heard that it ended up a draw, right?
Yeah, which for me is just bonkers.
Yeah, that's what I
Many,
heard. I heard it was crazy.
yeah, many well-respected people in boxing had Chelly at least 8 rounds winning out of the 10, which
Oh,
I tend to agree with. But yeah, for some reason it was given a split draw. So I don't know if they had binoculars or what, but that definitely was not a draw, that fight.
so for Matchroom tonight, you've got a crap Sky stream, which didn't let
Yeah,
anyone online view the fights.
yeah,
You've got the first fight, there was a complete hammering that ended up as a draw. You've got
Yeah,
a really disputable Katie Taylor win, say,
sure.
and then you've got the main event, your matchroom fighter getting beat.
Yeah, did you catch any of the Babbage fight?
Yes, I saw. I saw. That didn't. Was that only 2 rounds or something?
Yeah,
Yeah. So Babic was going crazy in that fight. Now, I caught bits of that fight. Now, it was only Babic's what, fourth fight.
yeah,
The only thing that worried about me was he was trying too hard. He was trying too hard. Now, although he did get the knockout in the end, he stopped the guy in the end. But he, it looked as if that would go 1 or 2 more rounds, he was going to completely punch himself out.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm a little
I
bit worried about that guy, right? Now, okay, it's only his third or fourth fight, but I think the guy needs to pace himself a bit more.
Yeah, on Twitter certainly the sort of consensus on there is maybe him fighting a Dave Allen next, which could be interesting.
Yeah. Well, he needs to pace himself a bit more because I think at one point during the second round, I was looking at the guy thinking he's knackered.
Yeah, the way he does these swings, it reminds me sort of a Stretch Armstrong toy. When
Yeah, he was pretty wild, right?
yeah, yeah, I can't see him really going anywhere in the sport other than sort of I don't know. He may pick up a IBF European, God knows what you call it nowadays, but sort of that belt.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many belts these days that we don't know what they are. But yeah, we'll
Yeah,
have to see. But I mean, how old is he? He looks
he's 29.
okay. So what I say, he looks a bit older than. So I mean, he's 29. Only had 4 fights. He's gonna have to get a move on. But then you can't fight every fight like he fought tonight because a much better fighter than Sean Dale Williams will just duck out of the way of those punches and then counterpunch him and knock him out. That's what'll happen to him.
Yeah, did you catch what they both actually weighed in for that fight?
I know Sean Dell Williams was really light for that fight. I think was he not 14 stone or
I think it was 13-10.
Jesus, I mean that's light. And this is what we briefly spoke, I think, on the podcast before about the WBC were wanting to make a
In
a different
between weight,
weight
yeah.
class, an in between weight. A guy, he was basically under 14 stone. These guys are heavyweights, and they're going to fight, say, Dillian Whyte, who was 18 stone. That's 4 stone of difference. That's fucking massive,
Yes,
right?
it's unbelievable the difference.
4 stones is 64 pounds, right?
Yeah,
And when you consider going up to light heavy and cruiser, if you look at welterweights, what, 154, going
yeah,
up to middleweights 160, so that's 6 pounds of difference, and then super middles 168, and then light heavy, which is 8 pounds of difference, and then light heavies 175, which is 7. So you're talking about half a stone's difference between the weight classes, going from whatever it is, I don't know how low, bantamweight up to light heavy, right? And then all of a sudden, well, going up to cruiser, say, and then all of a sudden you go from cruiser to heavy, and that's it, right? And you've got guys that are 280 fighting guys that are 205. And it's
yeah.
like, what?
You would have to think that hopefully common sense prevails, and maybe, although some people don't agree with it, maybe a couple of weights added in will benefit the sport as a whole.
Well, I don't agree with such. small differences between the weights in general, right?
No, I agree. Yeah.
I don't, but I don't agree with the fact that there's such a big difference in the heavyweight. So like, I don't believe you should be going from 160 to 168 necessarily, right? I think that gap should be bigger, right?
Yeah.
Or lower down. Maybe you should have less divisions lower down. But I don't believe with a guy that's 205 should be fighting a guy that's 285, right? That's because
I
that's an
agree.
80-pound difference.
Yeah.
And
I
although it
think.
might be, although
Yeah.
the guy might be fat or whatever, but you
Yeah.
can't have people. You can't you can't sit there and say a guy fighting 160 and then fighting a guy at 168 isn't fair. You can't say that 8-pound difference isn't fair when
No.
you've got a guy fighting at say 210 that's got a guy fighting at 250. Right? That's 40 pounds of difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the biggest thing in boxing at the moment is the biggest weight gap, and that's probably between light heavyweight and cruiserweight. I
Yeah.
think if they can fill a void in there, then they can obviously work from that onwards, and then let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, see, you don't. I don't want to mess about too much with the heavyweights because you get loads of knockouts of that weight. But you know, even you can even look at Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder to an extent
Sure. Yeah.
because that showed you much as if you forgo the first fight because Tyson Fury was ring rusty as hell. If you look at the second fight, man, that was a massacre, right?
Yeah.
And okay, you might not want to blame that on weight, but it could have quite easily been. I mean, Deontay Wilder was what
215 or
but
something.
I know he put on weight in that fight. He was 220 or something. Tyson Fury's 280 something, and it just showed you like was that was like just a one-sided, complete and utter massacre. Now, was it the weight? Was it the skill? Who knows? You could argue that fact, but you know,
Yeah.
so you could argue that the weight difference is horrendous.
Yeah. So how do you see the boxing landscape sort of going in the next 2 or 3 months? Obviously now fight camp is over.
Well, I think I'm just hoping we're going to get. I'm just hoping that this the way things are now, we're going to get more. We're going to get more decent fights rather than filler fights. But I don't know because I'm now seeing that. So what I think we're going to get. Are we going to get Lomachenko Lopez? I think that's supposed to be
Yeah, I
done for
think that's
October. Is
around
that
November time.
okay? So we've always known that fight's going to go.
Yeah.
But I just hope we get. I just hope that it's a case of, well, we don't know when our next big payday is going to be, so let's go for it now. But I still think there's going to be a battle of the networks, so to speak, and a battle of the because I still think there's some fighters are going to duck other fighters. So I don't
Yeah, I
see it
agree.
changing. I think we might get one or two fights more that we would like to see. But I still think there's going to be a certain amount of well, I don't want to say ducking, but
Yeah.
a bit of tomfoolery going on.
Yeah. I don't know if you see Eddie Hearn's interview, but apparently here in the UK at least, he's planning for a big show. I don't know if it's pay-per-view or not on September the 27th.
Well, he's going to have to do a damn sight better than tonight, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
What's he got on that? Who's he headlining on September 27th?
He hasn't mentioned yet, but I think it was on the Matchroom YouTube. I see it. He said that there's going to be 4 more shows in the UK on pay-per-view this year, and I think
Nah,
September the 27th is the first one he's muted to be announced.
I doubt that very much. 4 more pay-per-views. Well, he's got Whyte, so he's not going to have him again. He might have Joshua on there, but I mean, who
Yeah,
who else is he going to
two.
have?
The two are going to be that we know so far. It's going to be Joshua and Chisora and Usyk. So 2 others
Perhaps,
apart from that.
but he's going to have to. Well, I mean, even the Usyk Chisora fight, he's going to have to stack the undercard there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, but then I don't know who's the other two he's going to have.
I know he's going to shove out Lawrence Okoli on for his world title, I think, on the Joshua card.
Oh, yeah, that'll need to be on. He's not going to get Lawrence Okoli on a pay-per-view card on his own, so he's going to have to put that on the undercard of Joshua.
Yeah. I
Unless
I
he's
don't know
got
how
Callum
true.
Smith fighting or Billy Joe Saunders or something.
Well, I don't know how true this is, so take this with a pinch of salt. But
Yeah.
I've heard from some people in boxing that one of them's going to be Kell Brook and Terence Crawford.
Well, he could, I suppose, he could. If he puts a few decent undercard fights on there, he could get away with pay-per-view on that. But I mean, that's not. I don't expect. I mean, it's big names on there, but I don't expect Kell Brook will have much of a chance in that fight. So I would view that as a. I know Kell Brook is a great fighter, but I mean, I don't think Terence Crawford's going to have much difficulty with Kell Brook, especially at this stage in his career.
No, you would have to say that it will be over in the first 5 or 6 rounds, wouldn't you?
Well, it just depends because Kell Brook's tough, right? Kell Brook's a tough guy. I just think that technically Terence Crawford's a far better fighter, so it could end up being a pretty one-sided fight, and it could go the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other one hasn't been announced yet, but yeah, that's certainly what they're planning. And if it comes to fruition, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, if Sky can get their online stream on the go, then you might actually give us a chance to get a pay-per-view fight. That really pissed me off tonight because I've been waiting for that a long time, and they just made a complete arse of that. So I hope Eddie Hearn says, because as I say, it would have only been me that was encountering those problems. There would have been a lot of people because it wasn't my computer.
Yeah, as I
Um,
mentioned you earlier on Twitter, there was about, I don't know, at least 700, 800 tweets saying the same thing about the online service not working properly.
oh, did you see hundreds of tweets about that?
Yeah. There was definitely, I don't know, it may be more now, but yeah, certainly you wasn't the only one that had those problems.
Yeah, can you do me a favor and send me some of that tweets because I obviously want to see just so I'm not completely insane. But yeah, they're gonna have to make. Well, they should really make an apology for that because I missed a load of those fights, right? It wasn't just a case of and the only reason I saw those fights because I was watching it as alternative methods, but a lot of people missed, and this is the whole thing they were building up for tonight, right? Over the whole 4 weeks, they were building up to this pay-per-view. It's going to be the dogs and da 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 da, and then people just missed. People just missed half the most of the fights, all of the fights
Yeah,
for this. So, and it's so, and as much as we've praised Eddie Hearn and Sky and stuff in the past, and I know it's not Eddie Hearn's fault. He only promotes the fights, he doesn't broadcast them. But Sky have got a lot to, speak up for here, because it's not only this, it's everything else as well. If you can't can't ex- can't if you can't get a simple broadcast of a pay-per-view fight on the go, then what else are you
yeah.
going to go?
I mean, even Anna Wilhouse had a howler tonight.
Oh,
She
did she?
said that, yeah, yeah. She said Katie Taylor, the GB gold medalist.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So I think for Sky all round, it wasn't their best of nights on their big return, I guess.
Well, to be fair to her, probably only half the people that saw her say that. Well, only half the people that should have saw her say that. Because I didn't
Yeah,
see her say that because I was too busy complaining to Sky for half the night.
yeah. Yeah, as I say, quite a lot of people on Twitter say about this. The desktop app for Sky Sports box office not working. So he definitely wasn't alone.
Okay, well, I feel slightly better now. I feel slightly better that it wasn't only me. But yeah, so we'll have to see. So hopefully Sky will learn from it. Well, I think that they must learn from it, because because they would have, well, they refunded me, so I imagine they refunded a load of other people, and they would have paid Dylan Whyte a fortune to get beat tonight, right? They would have paid him a fortune to get knocked out, and that
Yeah.
wouldn't have been very popular. So overall, bad night for Sky. So they're going to have to say, well, yeah, I'd imagine Adam Smith is gonna not going to go to bed tonight not feeling very feeling very good. Um,
Supposedly, the early numbers, it's done 500,000 buys.
yeah, of which half of them they probably had to refund because we couldn't watch it online. So who's
Yeah,
reporting it did 500,000 buys?
I think that's that Mike Coppinger. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of him.
Yeah, I know Mike Coppinger. So, but the only reason I don't know that is because I don't go on Twitter, and the reason I don't go on Twitter is because yeah, me and people have a difference of opinion, and yeah, it doesn't go so well.
Yeah, so as we wrap up for our latest post-show podcast, what would you give the show apart from the Sky issues out of 10?
Apart from the fact that I didn't see it,
Yeah,
most of it, I
that,
thought it was,
that's a big one.
well. To be fair, we got a spectacular knockout on the main event. So
Sure.
you know, the, when you look at the Whyte Povetkin fight on its own, you had Povetkin down a couple times, and then he knocked Whyte out in the end. So it's if you look at it from the neutral point of view, it was a pretty decent fight. So
Yeah.
um, I just wish I could have seen the whole. Just wish I could have seen the whole thing, really. So um, yeah, as I say, neutral point of view, pretty decent fight. It's it's just it just complicates things far much more going forward, which is, I suppose, is good because it gives us more to talk about. So
Yeah, I'm guessing if they did rematch White and Povetkin and say Dylan White won, I'm guessing he wouldn't automatically go back to where he would have been if he won tonight.
well, I don't know what that means, right? Because if they make Povetkin mandatory now for Tyson Fury, and then they rematch again, then it would put Dylan White as mandatory. Now, WBC can't keep pushing the mandatory back because there's a time frame for the mandatory.
Yeah.
So, strange one. We're just going to have to see how that develops going forward.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's gonna make for interesting things, and I'm sure there'll be much more twists and turns as we go forward.
Yeah. So, apart from your unfortunate events you had with Sky tonight, although you didn't really see much of it, what's your impression of what you did see?
Yeah, it was surprising. Well, not that surprising because we did have some skepticism before going into this main event, right?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So it was surprising in the fact that I thought Dillian Whyte would win, and he very nearly did win, and he was on course to win. But it was not so surprising in the fact that he didn't win, if you know what I
No.
mean. It was, we were, well, he should win, but there's the chance he won't because of his trainer. So I think it's good in some ways, but bad in others. It's good. It's good. It's bad in the ways that it opens up it opens the division up, and it makes things a whole lot more complicated than they are now. And I say it's bad in that way just because it's it's bad because we don't know what's going to happen now. But it's good in the same kind of way as, okay, well, it opens things up a bit, and I suppose it's good and bad in both ways, right? It opens things up to the fact that now we don't know where the hell things are at, and the division's more open now than probably it ever was been, because you've got Tyson Fury, you've got Anthony Joshua, you've got Deontay Wilder, you had Dillian Whyte, you've now got Povetkin. What's happened to Michael Hunter? He's left, you've got Joe Parker, what's he do? So it's good and bad for both. So we'll just have
Yeah.
to see how things pan out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a great night of boxing. The only thing that would capped it off if I had a few quid on my Povetkin knockout, but apart from that,
Yeah.
yeah, apart from that, I think it was a good night.
All right, mate. Well, I suppose we better kick it in the can because it's getting quite late.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I thank you for joining me in the aftermath. I mean, people that are listening, it is almost 1:45 in the morning, so I hope you appreciate us talking shite for about an hour post-fight. And yeah, we'll see you again, hopefully, for another boxing podcast in the not too distant future.